Good evening. I call this Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 Downtown Management Board meeting to order. Welcome to everyone being here tonight. Thank you. I know it's cold out. We're going to start with the consent agenda. I do want to thank Robin Bennett for running the meeting last month when I was sick. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the consent agenda.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as written.
And I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and thank you for the second. Gary? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments? We'll pass that. Okay. New business. We'll let our guest get settled and then he's going to present and discuss. We'll have a discussion of the Pennsylvania Park Master Plan concepts.
And just a little background. Okay. These two concepts were discussed at the last design committee meeting. And then the committee actually went out and walked the park, and because you don't really get a feel for it until you're actually in the space. So they provided Tim some additional comments, and you'll see, I gave the design committee, you'll see I put kind of a questionnaire in front of you tonight. If you can just, after the presentation, kind of go through those things that just kind of touches on the major elements of the plan. And just, if you have strong, medium, or low, you think it's a priority or not, each of those elements. And then we're just kind of combining what the design committee input has given us, and then we'll also provide the management board's input on that.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Oh, I think I was looking for easels. Do you have any easels, no?
I have plans, but I also have flashcards.
How about we choose some chairs? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, show me plans. I've got it here, but I don't know.
Well, they have the small ones in front, and then I'll just put it on the screen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Second here, and I'll get these on board. There we go. Okay, so as Amy said, really just getting started, or have just gotten started regarding master planning for Penn Park. And so there are a couple things we want to accomplish. We're not presuming that we want to reinvent the park. There are a lot of great things happening at the park right now. Fantastic park. A lot of cities would kill to have a park with mature trees and shade right in the center, fronted on one side with businesses. So trying to keep a lot of what's right and maybe promote more of that, but also think about the future. When it comes to things like circulation, both pedestrian, bike circulation, vehicular circulation, parking, how the park itself functions right now, what activities took place. Some of the activities that parks would like to develop park for in the future, a whole group of things like that. So, and I apologize for not introducing myself and introducing for the back of the grader, I'll be contacting our downtown office here. I think some of you know me, but both of you don't, that, so that's what I am. So,
It's in front of you, so you can.
Welcome, Tim. We're excited for your presentation. Thank you.
thanks. So hopefully we can hear me a little bit better now. So one of the other things that is happening in the plan is the consideration to remove the Veterans Memorial Garden or Park. For a number of reasons, maybe to find a more restful space that we can dedicate solely to that park, that might facilitate events, commemorations a little bit better than the space does right now. But also the thought that maybe the space where the Veterans Memorial is now could be redeveloped for another use in the future, and that use has been for entertainment space. We know that the park has all sorts of functions during the summer, is drawing bigger and bigger crowds, so thinking about the potential that exists there and the opportunity to perhaps cater to it. So yeah, pedestrian and bike circulation. What happens in the space where the Veterans Memorial is now? And then another answer we wanted to get to is how to commemorate the rails. So we know the railway is formed in that space. It's the only space in town where we have a diagonal storefront, I guess, if you will. And the rails are an obvious reminder to that. We also know in the south half of the park that we see all sorts of activities on the rails in the form of kids trying to balance. On the other hand, we know that they're a constant trip hazard and a maintenance hazard. Eventually, the rails will have to be picked up regardless to replace the timbers that are underneath that are rotting right now. So if we don't replace those, the rails are going to sink. The solution is, if we wanted to keep them, to pick them up, put them back with concrete beams, set them on the beams, let the turf infill between all of those beams. But that's a detailed solution that we're going to get to. But the point we wanted to try to get to, one of the answers we wanted to try to resolve regarding the master plan is what happens to the rails. Do they come out? If they do come out, are they commemorated in some fashion physically? Okay. So we've got two concepts in front of you. The first concept is up on the screen. And so the focus in both concepts is to, I guess, recognize again the things that we know that are working for us in the park. For example, we know we've got a great overhead canopy, not a lot of plants underneath, which gives you these great vistas from one end of the park to the other, but a really nice place to be on a hot summer day. Another thing that seems to work are the circulation routes. There's some circulation routes right now kind of weave themselves in and out of the existing trees, probably more accurately, the old sidewalks were built first and the trees were planted after and formed the space in between. But the point is, we don't want to undo that at the expense of having to remove trees. So on both concepts, we're trying to, again, weave those sidewalks between the trees so that we're realizing the circulation routes that were planned before, taking advantage of them, maybe streamlining them or repurposing them, but trying to keep the tree canopy that we have. And so that's why you don't see a lot of wild and crazy ideas here. Even the notion that the rails come out. I mean, these rails, especially on the south half of the park, provide a real significant grade separation. So above the rails, we know this is virtually flat. There's all sorts of space to have activities up here, whereas this is sloped. Now, if we took those rails out, for example, we might be able to level that grade, but then we lose that hierarchy of nice flat space and slope, okay? The other thing that we think is working that we're trying to show in both plans is preserving the north half of the park as a less developed space. We know less activity occurs up there now, more activity occurs in the south half. So trying to trying to propose development of those two halves accordingly. So the first plan tries to work with as few straight lines as possible. The south block, again, tries to approximate those circulation routes, which, if you look at the way the sidewalks were laid out through the park now, it's apparent that they probably followed wear paths or pedestrian wear paths on the lawn and poured the concrete to follow that, because they take you to every place you want to go pretty efficiently. So trying again to realize that, but maybe a little bit more efficiently, and give all of these walks a nice curvilinear feel so that it really feels like you're outside of the street grid and within a park space when you're within the park. So the other thing that's proposed in this plan is the location of an entertainment space. And so this would be on the far east end of the park, just about where the Veterans Memorials are now. And so this big shape here would be in a large pavilion or gazebo, 2 or 3 times the size of our current gazebo, big enough as to serve as a band shell, but serve for I guess a lot of different activities. This would be a nice promenade to use for art fair, for example, as well. So on this side of the walk, we're envisioning no lawn, but a garden of low perennials. And then these larger circles represent additional shade trees. So we're just trying to build back some canopy, not just in this part of the park, but as the park meets the, I guess it'd be eastern properties. If you walk through the space right now, it's apparent that there's a big hole right here. If you stand down here and look upslope towards this area, you see the top of these hedges, but then you see kind of an array of building backs behind. It might be nice to control that view, get people a little bit more shade in here. Well, that's what these shade trees represent, and this big crescent of green represent. As I mentioned, a big area of perennial garden. So keeping the walk that runs from the northwest to southeast corner of the south block of Penn Park, but trying to give it some articulation. And what this does is stretch out the trail a little bit, which allows us to flatten it out a little bit, which allows us to develop an accessible route there. That would probably incur some significant grading, but not enough to result in the removal of those trees. And then the idea in this original plan was to develop a plaza right at this location about where the cannon is now, to serve as a Christmas tree plaza. And that Christmas tree could be permanent, or it could be something that's brought in seasonal, and that plaza could serve another purpose. But one realization we had right away is that we need to find a space for that cannon. It's a historic element. It's been in the park for as long as our photos go back, much further than the Veterans Memorial, and kids seem to love interacting with it. So we thought right away we need to find a space for that cannon somewhere in this plaza. The rails we're proposing leaving alone in both instances, but in the north block, the sidewalk currently maintains about the same distance from the parking lot from north to south. In other words, you have one row of arborvitae separating that sidewalk from the parking lot. The rails themselves pull away from the parking lot as they travel southward. So we thought, let's have the sidewalk do accordingly. We can fill this space with more vegetation and give at least some more visual buffer and distance between the walk here and the parking lot. There's a lot going on here visually that we could probably buffer and control. I'm talking about views into parking and the pay station and things like that. Okay, the last thing, we've got one concept showing a developed space in front of the JCPenney. So our understanding is this sidewalk here that fronts the building is within the owner's property, but this is all public space. So let's try to take advantage of it, maybe maximize the space for flexibility. So this concept, it's just a big flat space interspersed with some low perennial beds and walks, but also with some lower shade trees to screen this view. Again, if you stand at this end and look south, your eye eventually catches the cars parked down in this block. So if we can introduce some screening at the south terminus of the park, we can block that view and provide a nice focus on this little park here. I guess the last thing I should mention, in both of these plans, we're proposing a curbless street on Lake Street. So this could be part of Lake Street. It could be the whole Lake Street. The concept is that you walk out the door from one business. And that elevation is level. If you cut a cross section across the street, that elevation is level. With the storefront on the other side, there's no curb. You have a flat gutter pan to denote visually where cars stop and start. But it programs the street for pedestrian activity much more. You remove curbs, it's much easier to cross the street. Also easier to close all or part of the street for fairs and events and things like that. So two concepts here. One is that we're curbless from Lake Street to the parking lot entrance. But that we're also sacrificing 7 parking spaces here. So this would be truly a 2-lane road with no parking. What that does is it lets us push the park out into the road and get the north and south block closer together. It comes at the expense of that parking on both sides. So that's one decision that we want to get to. But if you stand here on a busy day, when both sides are parked up, it's going to feel as though there are 4 lanes of traffic because you have those 2 parked aisles on either side and 2-way traffic in the center. So what this does, it just brings the park together physically, visually, makes it much more safe for people to park, to cross the street at any point between the 2 crosswalks. So any questions about this first concept before we talk about the second?
I have a couple of questions. So we would lose potential 7 parking spots, and you're just saying, can you show me the full range of where parking is and where parking isn't?
So we would still have parking here
Okay,
as it is now. It would just be from this parking lot entrance to this crosswalk where the parking would be eliminated. Yeah.
okay. And on your, the J.C. Penney building, that little triangle park there, I don't see the clock. Is that still included in that space?
Yeah, that was an oversight, and that was one of the things we realized early on too. The clock needs to be included.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we're not removing the clock.
No.
Okay. And I know that Harbor Springs, has a unique way to put their Christmas tree in the middle of the street. I'm assuming that this plan, if we were to decide that we we're going to put a Christmas tree in every year, that would already be included, a tree stand.
Yes. Yeah, that whole arrangement. And one of the decisions is whether we do a permanent tree or whether we set a space aside for a seasonal, which seems like an easy decision until you consider a plaza this size and what it might look like when that tree is gone. Oh, yes.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You were talking about the proposed pavilion. What kind of size is that pavilion right there?
I think it's about a 28-foot diameter, and then it's just got an edge cut out of it on the back side, but I would just consider it as a 28-foot diameter circle.
Where is the cannon in this?
So the cannon is gonna have to be worked back into this space. We want to try as hard as we can. It's not shown here, but we want to try as hard as we can to incorporate it, even if that plaza changes or that tree moves. It just feels like the cannon is one of those few items that goes way back that we might want to, or which one might want to reserve location.
Some of the discussion of the design committee was maybe the tree belongs kind of the tree plaza belongs where it is currently. And the cannon kind of stays where it is, and then we figure out something else at that to connect around those 2 areas.
Okay. That makes more sense. I mean, with the pavilion offset, wouldn't the Christmas tree, whether it be permanent or not, kind of block a section of that pavilion. Like, cause what I'm envisioning is people are gonna gather in the park in front of that pavilion, right? And it's gonna be open on essentially three sides. So when we're doing the Christmas tree lighting or something similar, is that gonna, people can't gather behind where the Christmas tree
Yeah.
is and still see what's happening on the pavilion? Is that right? Or am I?
No, and I think that's a valid point to bring up. I mean, it may happen not that often to have activities where the tree is and where the pavilion is, but maybe it makes sense to get some distance between those two. I could see the tree, screening views into the pavilion if you had a big enough crowd there.
And so in that case, the cannon would stay essentially where it is, and then we'd find a new space.
You got it.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah,
now I'm with you. All right.
Yes.
Questions?
Yeah, I have how big is the gazebo that we have now?
It's about 14,
Okay.
like a 14-foot diameter circle, 14, 15 feet.
Is that 28-foot round pavilion? Is that wide enough to house, say, not house, but to handle the screen, the big screen, the movie in the park?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think it is, but I'm not sure if we want to elevate it so that it can serve that purpose.
Personally, I can see more being made of that space.
Yeah,
To the extent where, like, I don't know if you know, in Charlevoix's band Shell in their park,
Yeah,
they've
sure.
got professional lighting patents up there.
yeah,
And it's more of a venue.
yeah, it's a
And entertainment
3-season
venue.
building, yeah, absolutely.
I could see that becoming that in that space as well.
Yeah,
I'm just, I guess you're selling it short by just having a pavilion and a gazebo. It could be a lot, it could be more, but not over the top.
sure.
If
Yeah.
it's big enough.
No, and
big enough.
I mean, it's certainly conceivable to just raise the roof of that pavilion and find a way to, to space the columns such that you can put a screen at the back of it. And maybe a screen belongs on one side or the other, but I think,
Well, I'm
if that's
thinking
an
that,
idea,
I'm also thinking there's a performing space not only for music groups, but theater groups.
yeah, sure.
We want to do something outdoors there, that there would be lighting and
Yeah,
professional lighting, not
Yeah.
necessarily ambient.
yeah, I mean, a lot of different ideas, the movie screen lighting, it's all,
Multi-purpose.
ideas that we can plug into the plan if it seems like something that we want to pursue.
I would hate to
Absolutely.
see it built and not be big enough for those things, so
Yeah.
sometimes we have some bands that come down there. You know, is that pavilion gonna sit empty and then a band that's coming down there gonna try to put their band somewhere else in the park? Because it won't fit in the pavilion. I don't, so then is it,
Yeah, and that's that's probably a really good conversation for parks to have too. It's a programming question, so I know our Parks and Rec director, I think, does a fantastic job
yeah,
programming. So it's just a question of whether we have the demand to fill that space and we design it accordingly if we think it can.
well, I know some of the
Yeah.
events that Andy's had some bands at, I don't know
Yeah.
that would fulfill their need.
Yeah,
And I would hate to see that built and then them try to set up somewhere else in the park.
Sure.
If we had
Yeah.
that available to them.
Yeah, is it gonna be, was the thought process for like a performing venue or just similar to the gazebo that we have?
it was a performance venue larger than a gazebo because the gazebo is just can't accommodate those bigger groups. I mean, usually maybe we'll have to do a pair of musicians in that space. And then it starts to get really crowded.
Is the thought to have power and things like that ready to
Yeah,
put in there?
power lighting, absolutely, yeah. But again, the quality of that element, that shelter or performance space or whatever we want to call it, is one of the things we're trying to get to.
Got it, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are all good ideas, I think.
Oh, yeah,
I think if you're gonna develop the space for performance. I mean, not at the expense of the park, because it has other uses, but if you're gonna develop the space for performance, you really have to do so, otherwise people are gonna be pointing at the old gazebo and saying we have a larger version of. Of
well,
this.
we have, yeah.
Also, oh, sorry,
Oh, on the Christmas tree, if we were to do a permanent tree in that spot, how big of a tree can you transplant?
That's a great question. You can. Well, you should be able to get a 12 to,
Yeah, okay.
well, that's no object. You can do 20 to 30 feet. You could do a 12 to 16. Many contractors in town that'll do 12 to 16. Yeah,
There's one that'll do larger though.
yeah. Yeah, when the larger you get, the more risk you take of the tree not making it. In a nutshell, the smaller you start with, the better the likelihood, but when you get to 12 to 16 size, your risks are much less than 20, 30 feet. And there are countless evergreen nurseries across this part of the state. There used to be Christmas tree nurseries that have gone foul that are looking to sell really large trees. So the trees are out there.
Other questions from board members?
the curbless street, bringing those the two parks together. On concept one. Do you? I see green, is that grass or are those bushes?
This would be grass.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the only reason why I ask is because I know that not only does my business, but other businesses have deliveries that drop off here.
Mm,
On that section of, where they, let's say it's in the morning or,
sure.
whatever,
Yeah.
but does that give them room still to deliver? And they're 18-wheelers, they're not small.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like delivering on a 2-lane without parking, so
So no.
probably not. At least not from here to here.
Thanks for bringing that up, Gary.
Mhm.
You can kind of see it from this profile too, heading up the street, but we've had some discussion with regards to parking decks, especially in this type of space. City Park is kind of tucked away so that theirs is kind of more protected, but it seems like the rate of speed on this street sometimes gets higher, especially when pedestrian traffic isn't
Mhm.
super strong like it is in the peak summer.
Yeah,
Does a flat street like this take that into account, or how do we get people that are approaching this section of the city to be cognizant of us trying to make it more walkable and keep everybody safe at the same time, just
Yeah.
because there's a lot of elevation changes in the city and
sure.
people don't necessarily notice how fast they're going all the time.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. The reason we think people go so fast through here is because when there's no parking on either side, it looks like 4 lanes of traffic. There are all sorts of studies that show us the closer to the road you have vertical elements, the slower people tend to, just human nature, the slower we tend to go. So with this plan, one of the keys to kind of controlling that, which is a little bit hard to see because we haven't populated it as much as it needs to be, but all of the site elements, whether they're lights, trash cans, bike racks, parking meters, hopefully the meters go away someday, but all those elements get pushed out to this edge. So when you're driving, you see a line of those materials. If anybody's ever in Ann Arbor in the next, I don't know, between now and when we complete the master plan, take a drive down State Street, because this is what they did on State Street, and your first reaction when you look at a plan view without all of the furnishings is to think, you just drive anywhere, I can drive up on the sidewalks and park here if I want. But when you're approaching it as a driver, you just see a line of elements that's prohibiting you from physically crash into one of those if you do so. But also when you're within the space, the concrete or pavement, whether it's concrete, brick, is scored more closely, so it feels like a sidewalk or a pedestrian space, it's not jointed every 20 feet, it's jointed every 10 or 8 feet. So it just has a different textural feel, it tells you the different space and it makes you. For that.
Okay.
The key is really populating that element, so. And getting some verticals right on that line, whether in this version, we're showing no parking, but if the parking were to extend here, then those side elements would be, on that edge to allow parking there.
Tim, is this, I know we're calling it a curbless street, but is this actually showing the park as having basically a speed table or not? Cause that's, to Drew's point, another way to resolve it is to actually have the pavement start ramping up.
Yes.
Basically ramp up between the two parks and then ramp back down. So that itself should slow people down as well.
Yeah, so in addition to where we park people, we also have to decide where the curb starts and stops. I mean, it could start at the intersection here. So the ramp, which is a 6-inch ramp stretched over 12 to 15 feet, you hardly can notice it. We have to do that so campers can get over without isolating themselves. But that ramp occurs here, and then there's another ramp here. That's how we get rid of the curb. We just have to bring the road up 6 inches to the sidewalk elevation here and here. That ramp doesn't have to happen there. If we were thinking we were going to close all of Lake Street from here to here, it might be the most logical approach, but if we're trying to slow traffic down through here, as Amy said, the logical solution is to put the curbless street just where the park meets the park, right? So this still has conventional curb parking. This could be curbless with additional parking or without, but we have a ramp here and a ramp here, and that's the only curbless section. So again, we're thinking about this in terms of where we want to park and not park, but also where the limits of that curbless street is. And maybe this makes a lot of sense to me because the original intent in introducing that curbless street was to bring the park together. I mean, we consider it a park element.
Any other comments from
yeah,
our
I
staff?
have a quick comment. I would love from an event standpoint, if if you're, if we're planning on doing something to our park, I would love for us to think about including, options for us to utilize the little pavilion or whatever, because I would hate to have a gazebo, a pavilion, and then we're still bringing in a stage from,
Yeah,
to
right.
have something for music. Because I think that would eliminate a lot of our barriers, especially if we have stuff already set up for lighting and everything. And then, also with our movie in the park, I think there would be a missed opportunity if it wasn't included in that. And then also I will say a little personal, but I love where the Christmas tree is now because you see it when you drive. And my only hesitation is by putting it back somewhere, you don't get that curb appeal anymore. But that's just, from my event standpoint brain, but.
Do you know how big of a section of stage risers that you've been renting for?
So we use the city stage and I think it's something like I had the dimensions written down. It's probably 14 feet wide and 25 feet long, maybe. I mean, it's very trailer-ish, like,
Okay.
very long and thin. So, but we've made do with that. But I would just hate for us not to use this opportunity to really make it something for that. So.
Sure.
That's a great point. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's-
Tim, I think we're probably ready for you to move on to number 2, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So concept number 2. In this plan, it's probably immediately apparent that we went away from the curvilinear approach. So probably what's driving this concept more than anything is physically commemorating the railway and the route that it takes right now. And so the intent is to remove the railway completely and replace it with a sidewalk, a 10-foot sidewalk, which meets the requirements of a non-motorized trail. So we can say we have a non-motorized trail that accommodates two-way bike, pedestrian, accessible traffic. And then to commemorate the trail, we would do one of the three things. We could reset the rails themselves physically in the sidewalk. Have them meet the sidewalk flush. We could tool joints in the sidewalk to approximate those rails and color the space in between those joints, the color of rails. Or we could form a groove in the concrete sidewalk and place pavers. Just it's three different ways to approximate the rails, but kind of commemorate that rail route. The other thing this does is it answers the question, where do cyclists go when they come into town on the downtown greenway from the north or south? Now, when the greenway was developed, the intent at the time was Penn Park is the destination, and that's where you park your bike and you're there, you're in downtown Petoskey. But there has been some discussion regarding providing a bicycle route to connect those two ends, which I think has some merit to it. So that's what this plan really intentionally tries to prioritize. Linking those two ends by commemorating this rail route, by paving it and showing some abstract of the rails. Something else we've done is push the pavilion out into this sidewalk here. But the thought is trying to give this building frontage a similar approach, you know, like almost like a downtown storefront, you know, building really doesn't have that until you get down to this end of the heart of the store. And then to really literally maintain this direct route at the expense of accessibility. So this trail would be as steep as it is, some walk would be as steep as it is now, from here to here. But it provides that direct route that no people really like. So the Christmas tree ends up in a plaza here, right next to the road. So its current location is right about there over showing that green. Okay, so we're proposing a building a plaza out to one, introduce an entrance to what's going to be a new sidewalk here. Provide a place for people to sit. This Christmas tree again could be permanent or seasonal, and then planting some low flowering trees on the back side of it, because again, this view can get not as attractive as your eye is on this way. So the thought here is a combination of landscape beds, trellis, and tree plantings to approximate the footprint of the old Cushman Hotel. That was something that I personally was grasping at, trying to find enough meaning to make this work. But that I'm willing to concede is a little too abstract for this space, and unless we develop something really intentional there and spend lots of money, nobody's going to look at it and think that's where the old Cushman Hotel stood. So I don't have a huge ego with that, went by the wayside pretty quickly.
And in our meeting, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, in our meeting, we decided that in concept two, it wouldn't be necessary to push out the pavilion from its other space.
Yes.
Space against the wall.
Gary, could you turn on your microphone, please?
Forgive me.
Thank you.
To push out that pavilion space from that wall, but to keep it back and still have, and then move that sidewalk more to the meandering in the front.
Sit right in the middle of that walk. Yeah, and Gary's right, this just kind of felt finding center between the two spaces. It feels funny moving it closer to the building with the walk between, because it feels like they've been pushing people through a really confined space. So then maybe it makes, as you said, more sense to just keep the orientation we had in the first plan. The other thing we heard regarding this plan was just, I think, the general objection to the linearity of it and the fact that we have 3 circulation routes. So I think it's fair to say there was a lot of back and forth regarding where bike traffic goes, though, because we're all realizing it's happening now. And it happens around the building fronts because that's where our sidewalk is the widest. It's about to get wider. So it's a time to start thinking about managing that traffic and putting it away from the building fronts where it belongs, rather than having it most accommodated where we least want it. But do you think that was fairly accurate?
I think so.
So, um. So neither concept shows this, but one question that introducing a larger gazebo brings up is a smaller gazebo. We're showing it at its current location. However, there was one idea to move it to the semicircular piece of pavement that you arrive at when you park at Elk Lot. And the other red lot, that semicircular piece of pavement, we determined should probably be preserved, right, and maybe use that radius to place some historic interpretive signs on the edge of. So one thing, a detail that's not shown in either of these plans, but that's referenced, is trying to introduce some interpretive signage to recapture the history of the park. We know the museum has all sorts of photos. And we could do some pretty neat things with those photos, like print them on a pane of glass and stand them in front of a perspective of the new building, so you can look through the space and see what it used to look like with present time right behind it. So again, trying to find space for interpretive signage, but also the thought that maybe this gazebo could move to that location as kind of a resting point for when you're arriving into town, getting out of your car and getting ready to come into town. So, before I stop talking about this area, so again, we have this space to work with. We're considering this space as a public space of Park Penn Park, right? There's no reason this can't be purpose for public activity from here on. One of the things we're not showing in this plan that has been proposed is maybe that temporary Christmas tree belongs in that space. I mean, it would certainly be visible. I think we got mixed feedback from design committee, and I've heard mixed feedback from the folks that I've bounced it off of, but it'd be good to hear your thoughts on that idea. One of the things we heard was that tenants in this building might not appreciate a Christmas tree outside their windows, but I was a tenant, I might want to hang my stocking on it.
Mr. Smith?
Maybe go north. If you're gonna make a view profile that's a little bit more, I mean, if we're totally discussing what the options are for where the Christmas tree is, maybe it ends up on the north side of that south section of the park, I suppose you would say. And yeah, because then it would be visible on Lake, but then you lose the visibility from Mitchell and kind of the grandeur that comes with that, so.
And the concepts that we're working on now that are partly a result of the discussion we had in design committee show an option where the tree goes back in the same location. A lot of people seem to like that location. It's doable. There's a lot of value to that spot.
Personally, I think across, in that area by J.C. Penney's, it would feel like it was kind of out there in space. A little bit. I don't feel it'd feel grounded. It'd feel like it was part of the building versus part of downtown. Because of the other elements that won't be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Other comments on proposal 2?
So in this plan, you can have the pavilion further set back, like in proposal 1.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get a picture of memory, but I thought we were even saying it could be this wall could pass in front or on this side.
It could, probably if it were bumped out and maybe curved a little more, just it wasn't so linear. Because you don't want people walking right in front of the space. I mean, directly.
Yeah, they're not gonna be using it at a 360-degree venue anyway, so.
Right. That's what I
Make sure to give it a, like you said, give it a back and.
Yeah. So the other thought and concern that I had was if we do this, I think it's great to commemorate the railway. That's something that I think is very important to me. But what I'm a little bit concerned with this particular proposal, especially when we're getting into the discussion of bike traffic, is there's not, it doesn't appear to be an element that's gonna A, slow anybody down coming over Lake Street, and B, if we are intending to have pedestrian traffic, at least we're offering 3 alternatives. But if there's no speed break for bike traffic from both sides of the green, well, really just coming in from I guess the Bayview, the north direction of the Greenway, I do have a little bit of concern with, I mean, we already have it, so I think we want to try to solve that in this solution.
Yeah.
So is there ways to make considerations for that? Is there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put the cannon in front? I don't know.
Oh. I want to show you real quickly our concept 1A that tries to resolve that. Basically, answer our question. So. Sorry, this won't be on the screen, but. So the highlighter just shows us.
Yeah. That's what we got.
In concept 1 revised, so we're keeping the curvilinear paths, but this shows us where bikes would go, so. This stretch here, we would have a constant 10 feet width. And so what that lets people do is get to this crosswalk, but there's an intentional jog in here that's gonna slow people down. That's
Right.
making that beeline. They still have the width to do this. Trail articulates around this plaza, maintains that 10 feet width and merges with this sidewalk. So conceptually, you're on your bike, you're coming into town, you have to crosswalk here and here. But then you're shunted to the east side of the park and away from that path.
Right, okay.
So this idea needs a little bit of work, but it's, the idea is to try to prioritize or provide a 10-foot wide route. That doesn't disrupt what's happening, really on either side, but mainly on the west side.
Yeah.
Tim, are we required to provide a 10-foot wide? Motorized trail through our park? So several times this summer, I stepped out from my business and was almost run over by somebody bicycling on the sidewalk. So what do we put in place? To protect pedestrians who are wandering in the park and pushing baby strollers and things and not paying attention to the fact that there's going to be a bicyclist,
Well, I mean, one, I think that's a vote against that idea. Again, I think getting the traffic away from the storefronts is really important because your visibility is limited to 180 degrees. If we can get bikes out in a space where you can see 360 degrees would be a little safer. But we talked about this in design committee, even if we send cyclists through that route, we probably want to place something here and here at a minimum when there are events, but maybe not just when there are events that represents a bottleneck that makes people stop and start again.
I have one more question. We've talked about removing the memorials to veterans and they all haven't always been there and all of them haven't always been there either, right? We've added on throughout the years. So what is the plan for that? Because once we start talking about this, that will be the first outcry.
Yeah.
There needs to be something bigger and better and brighter that they're being moved to. So what is that plan?
So I didn't bring the plans tonight because I wanted to get as much input on this space as I can, but the plan is to reconstruct at Arlington Park in the triangular space that's formed by the parking on the east side and the street on the west side.
Okay.
And so it's pretty wide open space, right? And there's a lot of freeway traffic going by. So we know we have those two things to contend with. We want to try to plant some buffer that doesn't block the fantastic view, but that doesn't make people feel like they're sitting on the side of a highway. We can share those plans. We've got, I believe, a 2 and a 2A. So we've got a total of 3 concepts that we can share with this.
As long as there's I
Um,
personally don't need to see that as long as I know
Yeah.
there's a,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that this group understands that those plans have already been developed, because the worst way to go about this is to develop the space first. Say we're redeveloping the space and not have a plan for where those go in the first place.
thank you.
Isn't there something over there behind Chief Petoskey already?
Yes. Yeah, there's a marker for,
Chief Pontiac.
there's Chief Pontiac.
Cannon?
There's another one for,
It's a cannon,
there's a cannon, but then there's two rocks on one.
trail. It's a historic trail.
There's a trail, and I think that's Chief Pontiac, yeah.
Going north.
But then there's another boulder underneath the three really large silver maples that's, oh, what's the woman's?
Daughter of the Revolution.
Thank you, I believe so, yeah.
So I thought at one point we discussed incorporating the
Yeah,
Pennsylvania parks with that.
right, so and I think that's kind of where the idea came from. As an aside, I think hopefully this group knows we had a garden concept for the north part of Arlington Park that involved some work with the tribe. And so relocation of the Veterans Memorial came up, and we wanted to ask them, are you guys comfortable with this space being adjacent to? And the response we got was, well, yes, and maybe you can introduce another memorial that recognizes Indigenous veterans.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anything from the public? Any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. So Tim, what are you looking for from us tonight?
I'm not sure we can ask a whole lot of you tonight, because this is the first time you've really seen these and heard us talk about them. So why don't we do this? I can send you, well, you have copies of the two plans, correct?
We do.
They have it, and I also gave them that same checklist that we did for design committee.
Yeah.
Cause that's, like, some of the questions are. There's a question of the rails. Do the rails need to stay there? Should they stay in a section of the park? Should they stay the length of the park? Can they be incorporated into a sidewalk? Should they not be incorporated? So all of those things, and then kind of prioritize each of those individually, and then we'll take all of that and combine it with the results we've gotten from the design committee. Because the rails are obviously a big one, but the other big question is, if the downtown Greenway corridor was really developed to bring people to downtown, do we want them to be biking through this park, or do we want them, as much as we can, to realize this is where you stop, get off your bike, and this is a pedestrian area? Or do we want them to be able to continue the Greenway corridor from south of Mitchell to north of Bay?
So just to let this group know too, we're gonna sit down with Top of Michigan Trails and hopefully Emily Meyerson as well, and get their input. Emily had some really good input when we were developing the first go around of the downtown Greenway. So not to say their thoughts prevail, but we just want to get that info also.
And Amy, when are you looking for us to return this to you? Tonight, tomorrow?
No. I'll, in the next week, if you could get it, to me,
Okay.
that'd be great. I can also send it electronically, so you can just click through it instead of
All right.
writing it if you want.
So our goal is to come back in a month with one plan. And that one plan may still have some decisions, this walk or that walk, Cannon goes here or there, but with one plan that we call a draft master plan that we can make some final decisions on, after which we can finalize.
Mr. Katie, do you have a comment?
What were your big takeaways from our group right now as far as changes? Did you have, are you walking away with anything? To recap.
I think some pretty consistent, which is good, takeaways that we got from design committee. One, people really like the location of the current Christmas tree. It's important that it be visible. Two, providing a thoroughfare for bikes probably isn't the answer to commemorating the rails. And that the space is, And I guess we'll find out more as we go on, but the space is really meant for pedestrians, right? And people who are visiting downtown. The biggest takeaway that I maybe hadn't anticipated as much was really maximizing that entertainment space and trying to get the most out of it.
Good.
So, anything I missed?
That's what it felt to me.
Sounds.
No, the only thing I'll add is as hard as the thought exercise is to, because I do this quite frequently, is try to explain to people where the Cushman Hotel was. So I understand that challenge quite a bit. I'm just worried about losing any element of the rail, not all element of the railway, but any element of the railway, so that we still have that kind of visual picture to folks that are gonna come around for generations that, you know, as things change, as, you know, things fade away, it is really hard to say, now picture this building that goes all the way, and I have pictures to use that are hanging on our walls that I can describe where the Cushman was. It's beautiful. I mean, to think that people sat there with a cup of coffee on a big long
Yeah.
porch is pretty amazing. So, you know, even I have photographic evidence to help me with that conversation. I just think it's important to consider how we need to ingrain the railway into that park, just because I think it's something that we don't want to forget.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So we were having a lot of feedback issues. By the teeth grinding and mashing. Everybody should take a sunset minute and take a look at the sunset. It's absolutely glorious. Oh, okay. All right, see
We're
it.
gonna still see that one.
Right.
What
Thank you,
were the
Tim.
notes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Joe, I thought that was a great question to ask as a wrap up. Thank you. So. All right, we will get these back to Amy within the next week. Okay. Discussion and action on recommendation of marketing and promotions committee regarding street closures for men's night event. Sorry, I've lost my. There we go. Amy, would you like to, or Andy, I'm sorry, it's marketing. Would you like to update us on?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know, do you, I mean, it was.
For go ahead, for the men's night committee.
Okay. Yes, so I think this is something that's probably not a huge shock to you guys. So a little bit of history, we had a group that did the men's night out event last year. They had applied to do it as a pop-up event this year. The board made the decision for us to take it over. This group has always been pretty passionate about, they would like to see the streets closed for this event. So we have now met, we have a subcommittee formed. We've met, I think, 2 or 3 times already. We have our most recent meeting. We had discussed the street closures, there's still interest in it. Instead of, we've taken some survey responses from the downtown merchants about what street closures they would want to see. All of the street closures, like for holiday open house, or if they would just maybe like to condense it to Howard and Lake Street. That is where the subcommittee has landed on, that they would like to just kind of close it to Lake and Howard Street. So it would be from the Elks Lot to V, and then it would be from the Petoskey Chamber down to Mettler's. And the thought is with this street closure that there would be 3 DJs in the streets to kind of create a festive atmosphere for gentlemen out shopping that night. I think that's kind of all of the history on it. So then our subcommittee made the recommendation to our marketing and promotions committee last week. Our marketing and promotions committee reviewed their interest. And the marketing committee really just wants to support this subcommittee and support the event. And then obviously the marketing and promotions committee then made a recommendation to all of you. So then what will, depending on your decision tonight, if you have decided to go forward with the street closures, then you will be giving me the direction to apply to the city, who ultimately yay or nays it, basically. And that's what they do with all of our events. I do a special event application, since we'll be asking for a street closure. We do have a member of our subcommittee here, to speak a little bit as well. Just kind of reiterate what the committee is feeling. So I'm not sure when you
Okay.
want that, but yeah, that's kind of the history on it, with the 3 DJs in it, and it would just create a fun festive atmosphere. Obviously with street closures, the feedback is all over the board. There's some people that really want it, some people that hate it, that kind of thing. That's just the way it is with street closures in downtown, I feel like. But I think it's, and then the thought also is that continuing to see this event grow, starting with the street closures right now, is what the committee is looking for, so.
Would you like to come up and introduce yourself and give us a brief presentation? That'd be lovely.
Yes, my name is Alana Kelly. I'm the owner of Picado and one of the members at the Men's Night Committee. So we met 3 times, and during the meetings, we've taken in consideration, like Andy said, all of the feedbacks from last year's event that we did, and decided that definitely it is a new event. Some people are leaning towards closing, some are not, but at the same time, there have been feedbacks that may have not, or that some stores did not get enough traffic to the end of their blocks. Because what we did is we put one DJ at the center of the intersection. And so basically it gathered more attention in the center rather than spreading throughout the streets. So what we thought to do is, if we were to take 3 DJs and putting it on each side of, at each end of Howard Lake, and then at the end of Lake Street by V2V, it would definitely bring the attention to each end of the block, spreading a little bit more excitement down there, bring attention to the stores, and of course, creating more traffic. So hopefully with 3 of those locations, people will be more inclined of going down that way. With that being said, also, because we do have traffic, people walking and music playing on the streets, it will be safer for the streets to be closed. Not only because it's fun thing to do to have the streets closed and people walking around, but also just for the safety perspective that it will definitely eliminate any distraction or potential accidents. And so we also have talked about marketing, where we will do advertising with a couple of different radio stations to try to bring more exposure to this event, and creating definitely a fun night for men's and even women, like we've discussed, possibly even working with Beards Brewery to giving out beards or mustaches for women to join and participate in the men's night event as well.
Cute. Yeah. Any questions for Alana? Well, we need to discuss this. So, any questions or comments? Thoughts here?
I will say we have had a couple, and chime in, Amy, if you want to, a couple preliminary conversation at the city about potentially coming forward to them with these street closures for this. They obviously, the city wants to help support us in our events, make them successful. They have kind of just questioned the street closures for this event a little bit, just kind of what is the need for it as a new event, that kind of thing. But so I'll just be fully transparent that, we have had a little bit of conversations with that, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try.
So first and foremost, thank you very much for being a part of the
Yes, thank you.
subcommittee.
Thank you.
And thanks for participating. We're always trying to grow that, so thanks a lot for that. Was it discussed concentrating the three DJs into that Howard Lake Street section? And is there any concerns about the outskirts feeling a little less plugged in and dialed into the I just didn't know if there was any discussion at the subcommittee level on, anybody on, north end of Mitchell or anything like that that might feel left out or something like that.
There was, and of course, that end seemed to be always kind of left out. At the same time, closing the streets all the way to that end probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So yes, we talked about it, and basically, we just came to the conclusion that the most sense does make to actually do the intersection.
Yeah.
And hopefully with the DJ being at that end, it still will bring some attraction and visibility to that corner.
Sure.
If we close it all the way also to further Mitchell Street, parking becomes a little bit more of an issue, yes,
Sure.
because the downtown is closed or that corner is closed. And so you are now taking people further out. Maybe in a year or two, when the event becomes bigger, it will be more, there will be a need for that, but at this point, probably not as much.
Sure. Yeah. No, thank you.
And I think another thought was that in those locations with like a DJ right by the chamber, that sound would kind of carry a little bit. And it was also, those locations were also based on conversations with the DJ as well, to make sure that there's not any like competing sounds, so that's kind of what the thought of down by Mettler's, V2B, and then up by the chamber too. And hopefully that that sound will kind of, you'll be by Quiet Moose walking and be like, oh my God, Britney Spears. I love this. I gotta go down there, so.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. No, and I'm with the Perry. We're on an outskirt a lot.
Sure.
We just want to fill the hotel, so we send people down to you, so we don't, it's not as much of a concern on our end. I just didn't know if it was discussed on the Mitchell Street side. So
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, can you refresh our memories on what events downtown we do close the streets for?
Yes, I think that's another hesitation from city level as well about their concern with closing the streets for this event. Because we will be closing them for a holiday open house, which is December 6th. The parade, which is the next week on Saturday, the 14th, and then it would be this for the third week in a row. But we close streets for, starting in January, it would be trick or treat, which we've recently started to do that mostly just for safety because it's just so out of control now, in a good way though. So it'd be trick or treat, the parade, holiday open house,
Sidewalk
sales, and then the 4th of July parade. I believe those are the main ones. We used to for summer open house, but we don't really do that event anymore. And then we do not close them during winter weekend either, so.
Thank you. Alana, has the subcommittee talked at all about what other activities to put in the street? Because what happens, we have found when, like, we've had a car show or something and you have 4 cars on a block, it looks really, really weak. And so it becomes actually a deterrent. So what else would you be putting in the streets beside the DJs?
Not necessarily anything that we came to a conclusion. But we decided to do a poker run where it brings more people, becomes more interesting for guys to come down, and we discuss basically talked about giving incentive for them to come down. So working with possibly Ace Hardware where they could meet us or match our gift card to give some kind of a substance or bigger price for guys to be more encouraged about coming down and shopping for wives, themselves and of course children, whomever else they have. And Poker Run is one of those things that that was a part of it. So not necessarily on the streets putting, although if there was any suggestions, we would definitely review and would be happy to hear somebody else's thoughts, but nothing that we decided to add.
Okay.
It definitely closing the streets gives a little bit more of that importancy type of feeling, and also words are not coming to mind.
Kind of a big draw, kind of. I think Stephen is very passionate about that as well. He believes that, you know, if downtown closes the streets, it's for a big deal. And he's very passionate about that, how it creates a big draw. So I think that was kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah. At the same time, yes, we do understand that the event is new, and it's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna compare it to an event that's been year after year. So patience, and also understanding that it may take a year or two and a couple of years to grow, basically.
Okay. I'm looking for other thoughts. We'll start on the right side.
What about advertising?
So we do have overall a $5,000 budget. 1,000 will go to advertising with Line 96, and then another 1,000 with KLT radio stations. So those are very Northern Michigan base and captures a lot of more of a male attention. So we decided to take that route, and then Andy's gonna get with the representatives of the stations and figure out the timings and all of that. What's the best way for us to take this where we get a lot of exposure. We do have a budget for social media, which is $300, where obviously promotions will be, or not promotions, but some sort of advertising will happen on social media. We also have the flyers that are already printed, and by the way, hopefully with this year's flyers, everybody's happy. We've done I think a great job of incorporating everybody's input and desires. So everything is seems to be the flyer itself seems to be very, very cheerful and appropriate. So hopefully there's everybody's on board with that one. Of course, Facebook, any kind of social media and spreading the word, also encouraging business owners to send emails to their customers and do stuffers. So what are they called?
Like bag stuffers.
Bag stuffers, yeah.
And then obviously a press release, and then we'll be supplying with all of the merchants with like a little social media post to share and or image and stuff like that too. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know that several merchants appreciate you reworking the poster this year. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on closing the street? Remember that if we do pass it at this level, it will go to the city, and the city will ultimately make that decision. All right. I do like to encourage our committees for coming forward and putting together the work. And if our subcommittee and then our marketing and promotions committee, which I was not in attendance last week, also agrees that we should go ahead and approve the proposal to close the streets. I like to support committees. I also like to support our staff and the time that they put into things. Then I think that we should take that seriously, but also with an understanding that we would be looking at it for next year and whether or not it's needed as well, right? If the city were to approve it after our stuff, okay?
I don't think the city will have an issue with proving what you guys decide.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to. Request that city. Or that our staff requests the city's consideration to close the streets for the men's night out.
Do we have support?
I should. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Smith and Ms. Bennett. Any further discussion on the motion on the table? Okay, we will do a roll call vote. Andy, will you please roll call?
Albert,
Yay.
Smith,
Yay.
Bennett,
Yes.
Shorter,
Yes.
Ducey,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Keating.
Yeah.
Okay.
You at least have the names in front of you.
I'm like sweating.
That was a test.
Yeah.
Required participation now. Change now.
I'll submit the application and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Alana. Again, thank you for your participation and your volunteering. It's
Yes.
appreciated.
You're welcome, guys, and thank
And
you.
by the way, your windows are spectacular. Every morning I drive by and I go, I need to write her a note, so.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, reports by downtown management board committees and staff.
Since my microphone's on, I might as well keep talking. You have the minutes in your packet. It's very, very busy on my end right now. Like the next 3-4 months are very, very, very busy. But I just delivered, I like to do like a 2 times a year newsletter, spring and fall newsletter. So I just did a big delivery of, I email it out and then I also hand deliver it. So I just did a big newsletter and distribution with flyers as well for a bunch of our events coming up. If you did not get a newsletter, please let me know. I have a couple wonderful copies for you. They just have basically a lot of event information in them, and then a note from Amy, some downtown dollar information, a little bit of information about the parking changes that went on as well. I know a lot of businesses are really appreciative of this, so it's nice to get that out. And then we're really focusing on, at least on my end, about advertising the parade date change, because now that's right around the corner, and it's, maybe what keeps me up at night, who knows? But so we're really trying to advertise that date, and I know as much as we do, you're not gonna get everyone. Some people are gonna show up on that Saturday after Thanksgiving, but at least we have a lovely downtown for them to enjoy for the day. And I just did a press release about the date change and saw that was picked up by Petoskey News Review. I very hesitantly looked at the comments. They weren't terrible, so that's good. But with a big change like this, you're not going to make everyone happy, but overall it could have been a lot worse, so that's good. And then, so really kind of getting that date out, hitting the advertising hard for that. We already have 5 people signed up for the parade. That's really fun. So kind of working with Rotary really on that. And then we're also getting some interest in downtown stores participating in hosting their own downtown events. So that is kind of what our marketing committee minutes were just made up of. We heard we've been approached by Monarch, William at Monarch. He has a great idea for a big flower festival. We've also been approached by the Meyer Ace Hardware boys, who want to do kind of like a merry marketplace kind of thing in their parking lot. So there's, I think a lot of people we all often always hear that we need more events, but we can only do what we can do. So it is kind of nice to see other businesses stepping up and really kind of taking some ownership and saying, hey, we're going to do this instead. We think it's needed. So it kind of puts us in an interesting position too, because obviously our budget is done a year in advance. We want to help support merchants, their businesses, and their event ideas, but we're also limited in what we can do staff-wise, budgetary-wise. So we've kind of come up with a little flow chart of what to do when someone approaches me about an event idea, because obviously we want to make sure that they're heard, they're appreciated, that they're just not disregarded. So that was brings me back to the Monarchs presentation to our marketing and promotions committee. William approached us and said he has a wonderful idea for 2 events actually, which one would be a spring flower festival in the beginning of June, and then it would be replicated again in the fall for like a harvest festival. And this is something that Monarch is doing on their own. We are helping support in a limited way, but just kind of helping what we can do, you know, helping advertise it for them, being there as a resource if they need it. But this is an event that they are doing on, you know, by themselves. So we had a presentation from that. From William, and then we talked about the men's night subcommittee, street closures. So it's nice, and it's very busy in Andy's world right now, so.
Thank you. Is there a theme song for Andy's World?
I'll come up with one.
All right, thank you. April?
All right, so our parking committee was canceled this month because it's been pretty quiet, which is lovely in parking. We have increased
Yeah,
the number of the C permits, so they went from $60 to $30. So we've had an increase so far of 16 folks bought the C. Everybody is really, really happy that there has been a decrease. We're listening, so thank you for everybody for doing that. The other big thing is the holiday meter sponsorship is started, so we have until November 14th. Yay! We're hoping for even more sponsors than last year. And I was 32. That's all, thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
You've already heard about what the design committee was discussing. Pro Image did do their evaluation of the Hollywood sign, but I haven't gotten any cost back for that but they have done the evaluation. I'm supposed to get it back this week and see what that's looking like. And I'm also hoping to get the ordinance for dining decks to city council, hopefully in November. So have worked with the design committee a little on just kind of tweaking the outdoor dining furnishings regulation, their guidelines actually. And then that'll get incorporated into the ordinance. So that's the only committee update. Still working on getting additional members for the Economic Enhancement Committee. I've already had one that was on the committee say they no longer wanted to be on the committee, but we haven't met yet, but we'll keep that. So, it's the committee, it's the challenge of getting committees formed. And then just the other thing that I just wanted to review with you is, I think the joint meeting date. The 2 dates that work best would be the November 12th, which is a Tuesday, or the 13th, which is a Wednesday. So I think it would be best to stick with the Tuesday, the 12th, but I just wanted, of those 2 dates, if anyone is strongly one way or the other. We had 6 people that could make those 2 dates.
6 of our group?
Six plus 7 would be the mayor,
Okay.
but he would be on council at that point.
I am gonna be unable to attend the 12th and 13th, unfortunately.
Okay. Me too.
So we need to start over?
Sorry.
So do we need to start over with a date then?
It's up to you.
Cause I thought those dates were run by city council already. No,
I had an opportunity to take a date for surgery for my hand, replacement of my
gotcha.
wrist bones. And so when I called, I took the 11th. I need to get it done.
What's wrong with the 12th then?
Not everyone comes to meetings. Right after
If you're
surgery,
gonna
Robin.
pick me up and bring me.
No, I won't. I'll be on a boat.
Well, and I think it's important and valuable for you to be there, so maybe
The
we.
5th will not work though.
Hmm?
The 5th will not work.
The fifth,
The first, there was the fifth, the twelfth, and
It
the
was
13th.
October.
no, it was the 29th.
29th.
29th of October,
That will not work.
no,
We didn't, were we offered the fifth? We weren't.
yeah, the 3 dates we put out were the
No.
29th, 12th, and
Okay.
13th.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but this
That's what I
election
missed
day,
something.
That's right.
yeah, we're not doing that.
No,
No.
nor should we meet on the sixth.
No, right.
So we should try other dates?
I don't want to hold up this group from meeting, however, but I leave it up to you to make that decision.
Were there people who could meet the 29th?
That could make the 29th. Yes. Yeah, two of the people that could.
I
not
cannot make the 29th, but
You could not make the 29th, and the two people that could not make the 12th and 13th, Robin and Becky, I believe, could make the 29th.
then have it on the 29th,
Okay,
or it's December.
all right, we'll schedule the 29th.
Is there something wrong with December? I think you should be there. You're the,
I would think.
Yeah.
you're the chair. Then we, how about if we go back? We'll be meeting on Monday,
Okay,
and we come back with 4 dates
sounds good.
instead of 3.
Okay, sweet, thank you.
Is there a day, I guess, discussing this one, you know, I try to do this instead of doing Zoom or trying to pick out a time. Are there days of the week that will not work for people that say, oh, every Monday I jump rope with my. You know, every Monday I can't make it, or every Tuesday I can't make it. Are there days that no matter what are off table? I think that would help cross off some days.
I don't have that, I just have I will just be out of town at the end of October, so. Other than that. What did you just say?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Friday, Saturdays are tough. So,
I second that motion.
yeah.
There are some people that want Saturdays. I know that Shane, we've dealt with somebody.
Saturday morning, get in and out.
8 o'clock till 10, 9 till 11.
Well, and
7
maybe,
till- 7 till 5, till 9. So,
Um,
Kelly?
just so the board understands what the intent behind the meeting is.
Yeah.
Kind of an agenda that, things that should be on it. One is going to be talking parking fund revenue and fund balance, future CIP projects, the parking structure status and direction on the parking structure, and that's, I'm gonna get you a lot of background information, like how many parking structure studies have we done? What has been the cost of all those studies? So then also talking about the DDA TIF on 200 East Lake, and does it make sense to have that continue for the next 12 years? Or do we maybe consider disbanding the TIF? And should something move forward on the site, we reconsider at that point? Because right now, the TIF that's in place is not gonna do what it was originally set out to do anyway. So that's just another discussion, because you'll have another DDA meeting in January. And then talk about the RRC sites, because 200 East Lake, the Darling lot. And while it's not in the downtown district, but the other site currently identified is the former News Review warehouse. So not in the DDA district, but approximate to it. So if there's other things the board would like to discuss with council, happy to have that included on the agenda.
I think we need 4 hours to cover that stuff.
I'll get you a lot of stuff in advance, so.
What about our board meeting day? Prior to.
You mean a regular meeting?
Just wonder if we have it earlier And then our meeting is at 6. So like having it from 3 to 5 or something like that.
I don't think council, no, I know at least two that will throw an anchor into that because it was a fight for me to get us to move from 7 till 6. Okay, there are several that still bring food to eat at that time. I think it'll go nowhere.
Okay, just
That's fair.
asking.
I don't know if there's a possibility, I don't know. I guess checking with Shane or checking with Amy to see if there's a meeting date that we have, like that today, instead of your meeting, you would have. You would have a meeting,
Mhm.
you know, Shane. City Manager Horn, is it, you know, do we have, I suppose we're pretty crowded right now with the budget.
Yeah, we couldn't give up a meeting date.
Yeah, because we lost one and we'll lose one in November to begin with.
Mayor, could you turn on your microphone?
We'll be losing our first meeting in November to begin with, so we only have one meeting at. Oh, no. Oh, to the Thursday, yeah. That's right, sorry.
So it'll be the 7th and the 18th of November.
You guys meet the next December or what?
I think it's just getting into the busy holiday season, maybe we get pause and try to reconvene after the first of the year.
Plus, there's a time towards the end of November or early December. I don't know. So. Amy, does that give you enough direction to try and find a date with city council or? And if that doesn't work, we'll move it to January.
I'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Let's try and work it out Monday, see what we can come up with.
Yeah, it would definitely be
Dates.
good to have it. Well, I also have to publish so far in advance of the DDA meeting. So in the event, I'm not saying it would happen, but in the event at your annual meeting, you wanted to recommend to city council that we eliminate the TIF. That would have to be, I would have to know that sooner than later. But you could also wait till your second meeting of the year to do it. It's not pressing, it's just, I think, something that we should consider.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Amy?
Nope.
Report by city staff. Mr. Horn. Come on down.
Price is right.
That's right.
So we're in budget mode is all year long, as we all know, but right now it's crunch time for us as we're preparing for fiscal year 25. So council has approved our CIP a few meetings back, looking forward to the next 6 years. So now we're putting our operating budget together to pair with that. So that'll be forthcoming into November's meeting schedule. So that's keeping us very busy. We will be backfilling or filling 3 positions, 3 retirements at the end of the year. One being a department head level position, Mike Robbins' retirement. So that's occupying some time as well. You just can't replace that amount of 35 years of seniority and just his leadership and his service first mentality. So we certainly have people that we're talking with internally, but it's not going to be Mike Robbins. So, but in the same way, Mike Robbins wasn't the leader he was 35 years ago. So we have to walk alongside whoever replaces Mike to kind of build them up and encourage them and hopefully they can keep the ball moving down the field, if you will. So 3 positions that we're trying to fill, well, is keeping us busy as well. And then as you drive around the city, you can probably see some of the developments that are occurring. Really, the developers and contractors are taking advantage of some really nice weather. Maple Block is doing all their utility work right now. They're making very good progress. I don't know if you've all been in the loop of the whole dewatering discussion. There was concern once they started digging that there would be this influx of groundwater that would fill their trenches, and what are we going to do with that contaminated groundwater? So we went through this whole process of how are we going to deal with this, because you don't want to deal with it once it happens. You want to deal with it before it happens. So we went through this whole process, and fortunately, knock on whatever this is, we haven't had to go through that process with them. So we haven't had to deal with any sort of wet trenches and where we're going to pump that water off to. So that's been a plus. Elmer's is their general. Elmer's has gone through this process. They're very seasoned, very good contractor. So they're making very good progress. Water, sewer, and storm sewer installation currently. You can kind of see what the Lofts project is doing, making some vertical progress there as well. Working with the owner at I forgot the street address, but it's Emmett and Michigan Street, the former Hotel Del Rey project. That was slowly dying a slow death. It's kind of been revived again with the influx of MEDC dollars to the tune of about $860,000-ish to make that a viable project. So that's progressing. So we'll see some progress on that here soon. So that's a nice, that'll be about 9 workforce housing unit studio apartments that'll be going in there. And then the City Park Grill project is transitioning from a very laborious CDBG structure to more of a manageable MEDC structure. So that ownership group is moving forward with, again, much less stringent requirements than the federal government had, which I think everybody was pulling their hair out, myself included. So we're looking forward to seeing how that project evolves. That'll be about 5 units above City Park Grill. So that project is still moving forward as well. So there's a lot of things happening around the city. We still have chill grant funds. These are homeowner improvement funds for income qualified individuals. So I believe the last count, I have 8 applications that we're processing right now. These would be for life and safety improvements, whether it's code issues, electrical issues, plumbing, HVAC, roofs, windows, those type of energy improvements. So we're working with right now, again, 8 applicants on that. Up to $40,000 in funds for that program. So if you know of anyone that is interested in those, certainly direct them my way, and we'll get them the application and get them engaged in that process. Unfortunately, that is federal dollars. So I've been warning people as I've been working with them. You're going to be asked a lot of prying questions, and you'll have to provide a lot of detailed information. The last thing I want is for me to sign off on somebody approving their income and verifying that, and come to find out they have this huge offshore account somewhere that they didn't need this money. So we're doing our due diligence, making sure that the proper people are getting the funds and getting adequate as we go through this process, making sure that they're the right people for the funds and kind of checking those boxes, if you will. So a lot going on with the city, a lot of we're kind of getting ready for the next season that's upon us. So we'll be picking up leaves over the next month or so. So our crews will be busy going around the city doing that. And then we all know what comes after that. So kind of gearing up and preparing for that process. So fortunately, my staff has been through this multiple times. They're like a well-oiled machine. I'm kind of the newbie and hanging on for dear life at times, but I've got great people around me. So any questions for me? Mayor?
We have a ribbon cutting for.
Oh, thank you.
Friday,
Yes.
Friday at 5 o'clock.
That's great.
The artists will be there.
Yep.
By chance, if you're there, just make sure to go up and say hey, because the guy's really interesting, cool guy.
Yeah, this has been a really neat process. I'm not on the art commission. Amy is the representative for DMB. Doing a great job. It's interesting when we were going through, when the art commission was going through the 40+ submissions. I didn't have a vote, obviously, but I was kind of mentally going through it. And I'm sad to say this, but that one wasn't in my top 3. And I'm humble enough to say that, and certainly I'm not an expert, but I will say, to my defense, that wasn't what was proposed. So the art commission, to their credit, really took what the artists provided and crafted it to what you see there today. So again, credit to the art commission and their leadership, because they saw a vision that submission could be, even though that's what the artist didn't initially come forth with. So again, credit to them and their leadership, and that's why I'm not on that commission.